There was another fork on the table. That's how it started. Not a text. Not a phone call. Not lipstick on a collar. Just an extra fork. Silver. Curved. Slightly bent at the tip like someone had been chewing it. I wasn't supposed to be home early. My last client of the day canceled, so I came back around 4:30. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon. The kind of smell she only bothered with when she had guests. Rowena was in the shower when I got in. I noticed 2 mugs in the sink, one with lipstick, the other not. Hers was chipped. The other wasn't ours. We don't own plain white mugs. Everything we have is hand-painted or thrifted. And then I saw it. The fork. The out-of-place one. Sitting there like it belonged. Like it lived there. I didn't touch it. I just stood there, staring at that damn fork like it was going to confess. She came out of the bathroom 20 minutes later, towel around her hair, humming something I didn't recognize. When she saw me in the kitchen, she flinched, like I was the intruder. "You're home early," she said, trying to smile. Her eyes darted to the sink. "Who was here?" I asked. She laughed. "What? No one." I didn't press. Not then. I just said I was tired and went to the bedroom. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept thinking about the fork. How confident it looked. Like it had been used without fear. Like the person who used it didn't think they'd get caught. Like they'd been there before. Over the next week, I became a ghost in my own house. I started taking photos of things before I left for work. Pillows. Cupboards. Trash levels. I counted towels. I logged thermostat settings. I checked for smells. Cologne. Sweat. Anything not mine. And I waited. One Friday night, I told her I had a late client. I didn't. I parked my car 2 blocks away and walked home in the dark. At 9:42 p.m., the bedroom light turned off. At 9:46, the guest room light came on. We never used the guest room. I crept to the back window and peeked inside. There was a man in our guest bed. No shirt. Hair still wet from a shower. Using my pillow. I didn't break in. I didn't scream. I didn't knock. I just walked away. Quietly. Numb. Like I was leaving my own funeral. The next morning, I packed a small bag, left her a note, and vanished. Stayed with my cousin. No contact. No explanation. Nothing. 2 days later, I got the text. "We need to talk." I didn't reply. Not for a week. Then she showed up at my cousin's door. Eyes red, mascara smeared, voice shaking. "I'm done with this marriage," she said. I looked at her, dead in the eye, and said, "Then so am I. I'm free." She didn't expect that. She thought I'd fight. She thought I'd crawl. She thought I'd beg to know why. But I didn't. Because I already knew. What she didn't know, not yet, was what I'd done after I left. And a month later, she came to find out exactly that. She came to see who took her place. And trust me, it wasn't who she expected. A month passed. Not 30 days of healing. Not a month of clarity. It was more like floating. Blurry mornings, 2 quiet nights, and meals I never remembered finishing. I kept checking my phone, even though no one was texting. Every time the wind hit the windows, I thought it was her. Not because I missed her. Not really. I just didn't trust she'd let it in so cleanly. But she didn't reach out. Not once. Until she did. It was a Thursday. Gray, damp, quiet. I was making toast in the apartment I'd been renting since I left. The place still smelled like fresh paint and unfamiliar furniture polish. I hadn't unpacked half my boxes. I was still brushing my teeth with travel-sized toothpaste like I was just visiting my own life. I was standing barefoot in the kitchen when I heard the knock. 3 short raps. I didn't check the peephole. I already knew. Something in my gut twisted and told me it was her. I opened the door. There she stood, Rowena, with her perfect posture, her carefully undone hair, and that same forest green coat I bought her 3 winters ago. She looked small. Not in size. In energy. Like the wind had been knocked out of her and hadn't returned since. Her eyes scanned the room behind me, but I didn't move to let her in. "I just wanted to see you," she said. I didn't respond. She bit her lip, then added, "And to see who you're with." That's when it hit me. That's why she was really there. Curiosity. Insecurity. Possessiveness. Whatever you want to call it, it wasn't regret. It wasn't remorse. She didn't come to apologize. She came to compare. To evaluate the replacement. So I stepped aside and let her look. Her eyes drifted past me into the apartment. They landed on the coffee mug sitting on the kitchen island. On the shelf where a second toothbrush now sat. On the coat, not hers, hanging by the door. She didn't speak for a full 10 seconds. Then she smiled. Not a happy smile. A tight, shallow smirk. The kind you give when you think you're pretending better than you are. You moved on fast, she said quietly. I raised an eyebrow. Didn't you? Rowena took a step inside. I didn't stop her, though everything in me wanted to. She walked to the mug, picked it up like it would whisper secrets, then put it back down. She lives here, she asked. I shrugged. Why do you care? She didn't answer. Instead, she wandered further in, like she still had a right to the space. Like she could rewrite the ending by just being present again. She opened a drawer, saw the spoons, saw the mismatched ones. None from our old set. Everything here was new. Replaced. Rowena looked back at me. What's her name? I gave it to her. First name only. She repeated it under her breath, like she was testing it, chewing on it, trying to see if it fit better or worse than her own. And then, right on cue, footsteps. Soft. Bare. Approaching from the hallway. She appeared. No grand entrance. No dramatic pose. Just a woman in an oversized shirt and messy bun, holding a book in one hand and a cup of tea in the other. She paused when she saw Rowena. Oh, she said, not startled, just curious. Rowena blinked. Once. Twice. Took a sharp breath. This woman, the one in my kitchen, wasn't younger. Wasn't flashier. Wasn't some cliché upgrade. She was calm. Still. Comfortable in her own skin in a way Rowena never was. Rowena smiled again, but it cracked around the edges. I should go, she said quickly. Just wanted to see. She walked to the door without looking back. And just before she stepped out, she turned and said, I didn't expect her to be so real. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to say. She left. And this time, it felt permanent. But that wasn't the last time I saw her. Not even close. For a while, I thought that was the end of it. That weird Thursday visit. Her standing in my new kitchen, looking at the mug, the toothbrush, the woman who replaced her. It felt like closure. Or at least like a door finally locking. She left quietly, and I didn't hear from her again. But something about the way she looked at my new life unsettled me. That forced little smile, the crack in her voice, how quickly she disappeared. It didn't feel like she got what she came for. It felt like she was calculating. And I knew Rowena. When she went quiet, it was never a good sign. The days passed, mostly normal. My new girlfriend, I'll call her Kira, didn't ask too many questions. She wasn't the jealous type, and I didn't want to feed that energy anyway. She knew about my past, but not the full story. I left out the uglier parts. The forks. The mug. The man in the guest room. The fact that I still sometimes woke up expecting betrayal. Then came the night I saw her again. But this time, she didn't see me. It was pure coincidence. Or fate. Or something worse. I had parked across town after grabbing takeout, and as I was waiting for the food to be ready, I decided to walk around the block. Clear my head. Stretch my legs. The street was dim. One of those weird in-between neighborhoods full of old apartment buildings and boarded-up yoga studios. I was scrolling through my phone when I caught a glimpse of someone familiar across the street. Rowena. She was standing under a flickering street lamp, dressed in a coat I didn't recognize, holding her phone like she was waiting for someone. Her eyes kept darting up and down the sidewalk. She was anxious. Jumpy. That wasn't like her. Rowena was many things. Calculated, poised, always in control, but not jumpy. I froze. Just watched. I told myself to keep walking, to mind my own business. But of course I didn't. A black car pulled up, not a rideshare. She didn't check a license plate. She just opened the door and slid in like she knew exactly where she was going. And I followed. I got in my car and tailed them. I know how that sounds. Desperate, pathetic, but you have to understand. I wasn't over it. Not entirely. I was still haunted by the image of the man in my guest bed. The unanswered questions. The casual way she dropped our marriage like it was a coat that didn't fit anymore. They drove for about 10 minutes and pulled into an underground parking lot beneath a luxury condo tower. She got out and didn't even look around. She walked straight to the elevator like she'd done it 100 times. I parked 2 levels up and waited. 15 minutes later, she came out again, alone, this time wearing different shoes. High heels. The same coat. Lipstick now. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a one-time thing. This wasn't a new relationship either. This was something else. Something scheduled. Rehearsed. She was switching versions of herself between floors. Whoever lived in that building, they weren't dating her. They were using her. Or she was using them. And I suddenly remembered something. The fork. The first clue. The beginning of the unraveling. That fork didn't just belong to some affair. It was part of a pattern. A whole double life I barely scratched the surface of. She got back into the black car, and it disappeared into the night. I stayed parked for a long time, just sitting there, staring at the elevator, wondering how long this had been going on, wondering how many different versions of Rowena existed that I never met. When I got home that night, Kira was asleep. The apartment was quiet, safe, but I couldn't stop thinking about the way Rowena had looked, sharp, prepared, like she wasn't just cheating back then, but playing a long game. And I started to wonder something that chilled me more than anything else. What if she hadn't come to see who replaced her? What if she came to see what else she could still control? 3 days after I followed her, I found an envelope under my door. No name on it, no address, just a blank white envelope with a slightly crumpled corner like it had been handled too many times before it arrived here. At first, I thought it was just a flyer, some neighbor's mistake, until I picked it up and felt how thick it was. Not paper, something solid, heavy. I turned it over and found a single word written on the back in black ink. Ira. My name. No one calls me Ira except people from my past. Kira calls me Babe, or you HVAC nerd. Most of my friends call me by my last name, Godwin. It was already clear who this was from, and I suddenly realized something disturbing. Someone had been to my door. Again. I opened the envelope slowly, careful not to tear anything inside. There was no letter, no explanation, no cryptic message. Just 2 photographs. Glossy. Printed on high-quality paper like they were meant to last. The first one was of me, taken from behind, in the parking garage from a few nights ago. I was facing the building Rowena had entered. My posture was tense, my hands clenched at my sides. It was taken from a distance, but close enough to clearly make me out. The second one was worse. It was of Kira. She was sitting in our apartment's small balcony garden, drinking from a ceramic mug, her legs tucked under her. The photo was taken through the iron bars of the railing, from an angle only visible if someone had been standing outside, on the street, or in the alley behind the building. I just stared at the photos for what felt like hours. My ears rang. My stomach turned. I tried to convince myself this was someone else's sick joke. But I knew better. Rowena had been here again. Not at the front door this time. She'd been watching, following, photographing. She had been here while I was asleep, while Kira was alone. Maybe while we were both inside, unaware someone from our past was just a few feet away in the dark. What disturbed me more than anything else was the timing. She had sent these photos not after her visit, but after I had followed her. She knew. She had known I was there that night. She hadn't confronted me because she didn't need to. She wanted me to feel it. She wanted me to understand something I hadn't considered before, that I was never the one watching. She had been watching me all along. I didn't tell Kira. I couldn't. What would I say? Hey, my ex-wife might be stalking us, but it's probably fine, right? No. That would spiral into a storm I couldn't control. And if there's one thing I'd learned from being with Rowena, it's that losing control is how you lose everything. So instead, I quietly changed the locks. Installed a cheap security camera facing the hallway. I didn't tell the landlord. I didn't even tell my cousin. I just started sleeping lighter, listening more, double-checking the windows at night. But Rowena didn't reach out. She didn't text, call, or send more envelopes. The silence was somehow worse than confrontation. Because the thing about Rowena was she never acted without reason. Every move was a setup for something else. And this felt like the start of something. Not the end. It started with silence. Not the usual kind. Not Kira's taking a nap silence. Or she's got her headphones on silence. No, this was different. This was a hollow kind of silence. The kind that presses on your chest before your brain even realizes what's wrong. I came home at 7:10 p.m. The door was locked, lights off. I figured she was out. Nothing unusual. But then I noticed her keys were still on the hook. Kira never left without them. I called out. No answer. I checked every room. Nothing out of place, at first. Her shoes were by the door. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, screen face down. Her tea was still warm. But she wasn't there. It was like she had evaporated mid-step. I called her name again, louder this time. I opened every closet, pulled back every shower curtain like I was in a horror movie. I even opened the fridge like I expected her to be hiding there, laughing at me, like it was all some bizarre prank. But it wasn't. I stared at her phone for a long time. I didn't want to look through it. I wasn't that guy. But she was gone. And everything in me screamed that something was very, very wrong. The phone wasn't locked. She trusted me like that. I opened her messages. Nothing out of the ordinary. Group chat with friends. A few love you texts from me. A reminder about a vet appointment for her sister's dog. Then I saw a message request. No name. Just a number. The message had come through about 2 hours before I got home. He's not who you think he is. Come outside. I'll tell you everything. No reply. But based on the timeline, she had read it. And then she had vanished. I felt my heartbeat in my teeth. I called the number. It rang once, then went straight to voicemail. Blocked. I called Kira's friends. None of them had seen her. None of them had plans with her. No one even knew she had gone anywhere. I walked the building, checked the lobby footage through the security camera I had set up last week, the one facing the hallway. At 5:12 p.m., Kira opened the door. She stepped out barefoot, holding the phone. She wasn't panicked. She wasn't rushing. She looked curious, confused, like someone who didn't understand what was about to happen. She turned toward the elevator. Then she was gone. No return footage. No door opening again. Just a quiet hallway and a camera that recorded everything, except what happened next. I called the police that night, filed a missing persons report, gave them everything I had. They told me to wait 48 hours. Adults are allowed to disappear, the officer said, like that made it better. I didn't sleep. I sat by the door all night, waiting for a knock, a text, anything. At 3:41 a.m., my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I picked up without a word. There was no greeting, just breathing. Calm, measured. And then, a voice I knew better than my own heartbeat. Now you know how it feels. Click. I stared at the phone like it might burn through my hand. My mouth went dry. I didn't need to ask who it was. Rowena. This wasn't about love. It never had been. This was about control, power, punishment. She hadn't moved on. She had evolved into something colder, smarter, scarier. And now she had taken the one person I had let in after her. But this time, I wasn't going to sit and wait. I was going to find her. And I was going to end this, no matter what it cost me. For the first time in my life, I understood obsession. I stopped eating. I stopped answering texts. I stopped pretending I was okay. Every second Kira was missing felt like being buried alive, one heartbeat at a time. And the worst part? I knew who did it. I had no proof, no leverage, no way to stop her, but I knew. Rowena had crossed some invisible line. This wasn't cheating. This wasn't manipulation. This was something else entirely. Something feral and strategic. She wasn't lashing out. She was executing a plan. And I had to figure out what that plan was before it ended with a body. So I did what the police wouldn't. I started digging. I began with the building I had followed her to that night. The luxury condo tower with the underground parking and mirrored elevators. I had memorized the floor she visited, 17. I remembered watching her walk into the elevator. I remembered the way she changed shoes before and after. That detail stuck with me. She wasn't visiting someone. She was becoming someone. And now I needed to know who. I called in a favor from a guy I went to high school with, Devin. He did IT security for a real estate group. I told him I needed to find out if a woman named Rowena Godwin had a lease under her name at that building. He was hesitant, but I begged. Desperate men don't care about crossing lines. 3 hours later, he called me back. She doesn't live there, he said. But someone using her maiden name, Rowena Blake, signed a 6-month lease for Unit 1709, 2 weeks after your divorce. I hadn't heard that name in years. She hadn't used it since before we were married. She was building a new identity. Parallel. Invisible. I drove to the building the next morning and waited across the street. I didn't have a plan, just instinct. Around noon, I saw someone enter with food delivery. I ran across and caught the door before it shut. Inside, the lobby was spotless. Cold. Echoey. The concierge barely looked up. I took the elevator to 17. My palms were sweating. My throat dry. I had no idea what I was going to find, or if anyone would even answer the door. I knocked on 1709. Nothing. I knocked again. Harder. Still nothing. I pressed my ear to the door. Silence. I tried the handle, fully expecting it to be locked. It wasn't. The door creaked open an inch. My heart leapt into my throat. I knew I shouldn't, but I also knew I had to. I stepped inside. It was like walking into a movie set. Everything was staged, pristine, unnatural. No dust, no clutter, no fingerprints on anything. There was a single black coat hanging by the door, and a pair of women's heels lined up perfectly beneath it. On the table by the window, there was a vase. Empty, except for one dried rose. But it wasn't what was there that disturbed me. It was what wasn't. There were no family photos, no toothbrushes, no trash in the bin, no receipts, no toothpaste, no fridge magnets, no personality. It was the kind of apartment a spy might rent. Temporary. Erased. Except for one drawer. I opened it slowly and found a stack of notebooks. Black covers. Thin. Identical. Each one had a name written on the front in precise, blocky handwriting. First names. Always men. I didn't recognize any of them until the fourth one. Ira. I stared at it like it might bite me. My hands trembled as I opened it. It wasn't a diary. It was a log. Dates. Locations. Times. Observations. Page after page of entries, tracking my routines, my moods, who I texted, what I ate, where I went. There were entries from before the divorce. Before I ever suspected anything. One line stopped me cold. Kira finally moved in. Phase 2 begins. My skin went cold. My jaw locked. I felt nauseous. Kira wasn't just my girlfriend. She was part of this. Or at least, Rowena thought she was. I didn't know what to believe anymore. I didn't know who to trust. All I knew was I wasn't looking for a missing person anymore. I was looking for the truth. And someone was going to bleed to keep it hidden. I didn't leave the apartment right away. I couldn't. My knees felt like wet paper. I sat on the floor of Rowena's secret condo for what had to be 2 hours, surrounded by a silence so thick it felt like a sound. My own name stared back at me from the black notebook in my lap, its pages filled with pieces of my life I didn't even remember. Who I called, what time I left work, what I bought at the grocery store, how long I brushed my teeth. There were even notes about my breathing when I slept. She had been watching me for years. But it was that last sentence, Kira finally moved in. Phase 2 begins. That I couldn't shake. It repeated in my head like a chant. A spell. A curse. Kira. Kira, who brought me soup when I was sick. Who laughed at my worst jokes. Who kissed me like she meant it. Kira, who I let into the broken space Rowena left behind. Had I been so desperate for comfort that I missed the red flags? I opened the next notebook. This one had no name on the cover. Just a symbol, a small, drawn star. Inside, it wasn't logs or journal entries. It was documentation, research, names, dates, aliases, pictures clipped from newspapers and screenshots of social media profiles. Some crossed out, some circled. And then, 6 pages in, I found a driver's license. Illinois. A woman with dark hair and a soft smile. Kira L. Hartman. Except that wasn't the name on the license. It said Lena Claire Rivers. My mouth went dry. My pulse roared in my ears. I checked the birth date. Different from what Kira told me. I checked the address. A small town outside of Madison. I checked the issue date, 4 years ago. She'd been using this identity long before we met. My entire body turned cold. Kira wasn't Kira. She wasn't who she claimed to be. And Rowena knew. She hadn't just documented my life, she had documented hers, too. Which meant only one of 2 things was true. Either Rowena had been right all along, and I had been living with a plant, a fake, an actor, or Rowena had planted her. Either version was a nightmare. I took a photo of the ID with my phone, shoved the notebooks back in the drawer, and left the apartment without closing the door. I didn't care. Let it burn. I drove home on autopilot. Every streetlight felt like it was staring at me. When I finally walked into the apartment, I paused in the doorway. Everything looked the same. Keys on the hook, candles half burned on the windowsill, a blanket folded too perfectly on the couch. But it all felt wrong. I sat in the kitchen for hours, just staring at the wall, until my phone buzzed again. Blocked number. No voice this time. Just a message. You should have left her where I found her. I dropped the phone like it burned. My breath caught in my throat. She wasn't gone. She was with Rowena. And suddenly, I realized something even worse than betrayal. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't jealousy. This wasn't about me at all. This was possession. Rowena didn't want me back. She just didn't want anyone else to have me. And she would burn the whole world down to make sure no one ever tried again. 3 days passed. No new messages. No calls. No more photos slipped under doors. Just silence. And then the envelope came. Same as before. No return address. No markings. Just my name, neatly written in lowercase this time. Almost soft. I stood there holding it for a long time, trying to decide if I was ready to open it. If I had the strength. Inside was only one item. Not photos. Not documents. Just a single sheet of notebook paper, torn from one of her journals. On it, in the same precise handwriting, she had written, "You're free now. No one's watching. Not even me." That was it. No threats. No games. No signature. Just a sentence that read more like a surrender than a warning. At first, I didn't believe it. I waited for the trap, the twist, the explosion. But days turned into a week. A week into two. No sign of Rowena. No return of Kira. No blocked calls. No shadows outside my window. Just peace. Real, uncomfortable, almost alien peace. I started sleeping again. Not well, but enough. I started eating real food, not just dry cereal and gas station coffee. I even let myself play music in the apartment again. I hadn't realized how long it had been since the place felt alive. The police never found Kira, or Lena, or whatever her real name was. I filed what I could, gave them the notebook photos, explained the situation, carefully, omitting the parts that made me sound unhinged. They took it seriously, opened a case, but nothing ever came of it. And eventually, I had to accept the hardest truth of all. Some people vanish, and you never get the answers you want. But you still get to move on. One morning, I packed up the last box from the apartment. I didn't take much, just clothes, books, and a few sentimental things that still felt like mine. I left the furniture. I left the city. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I rented a small house upstate, near a lake. Quiet place. Friendly neighbors. I built a garden. I started going on long walks, the kind that end nowhere in particular. I even adopted a dog from the shelter, an old mutt with tired eyes and a missing tooth. I named him Walter. He snores like a freight train, but he keeps my feet warm at night, and that's enough. And one evening, golden hours spilling through the trees, I sat on my porch, coffee in hand, Walter snoring beside me, and I realized something. I wasn't thinking about her. Not Rowena. Not Kira. Not the fork, or the notebooks, or the photographs that haunted me. I was thinking about the breeze, the birdsong, the way the air felt warm without being heavy. I was present. I was here. I was alive. I was free. And maybe that's the only real revenge there is. Living. Fully. Without fear. Without ghosts. Without chains.